The Devin Townsend project is touring Australia in October with Periphery. Their show in Melbourne has already been sold out, but fortunately, second show on the 26th has been added. Devin released a double album last year, Z2, which featured a disc from the project, Sky Blue, and also another from his solo career, I guess you might say, following up on Ziltoy the Omniscient, which was Dark Matter. So, with this show, what can fans expect? Is theatrics part of what you're bringing to Melbourne?
It's a part of it, but it's not. It's not the main objective of this run. Usually, when we come to Australia, it gives us an opportunity to do something a little special, right? And we've been touring with a show that's been really cool for us for the past couple of years or past couple of months. And so right now, what I'm working on is trying to make something specific for Australia. I don't think we're going to have massive amounts of farting poozers running around the stages in Melbourne, but it's certainly going to be interesting.
Something to look forward to. So Periphery is going to be on this tour with you. How do you go about picking a tour band? Is there some sort of criteria you have?
I think there's a few criteria that come into it. First off would be musically compatible, and there is an aspect of Periphery that I think is complementary to what I do. It's similar enough yet different enough to be not a repeat and also very interesting. But I think for me personally, after touring for so many years, a lot of what I look for in touring bands is a sort of sense of camaraderie that doesn't seem to be focused as much around the hierarchy of it. Because, sometimes you'll be in touring situations with bands, and I have been, where, the headlining band is really, I don't know, rock star sort of vibe, right? And so with Periphery and with us, it's always been a situation where everybody just gets along really well, right?
You're also performing a bunch of acoustic shows in the UK before you come to Australia. So how did that come about? Have you done acoustic shows before?
I've done a lot of acoustic sort of performances, and it's something that at first I was trying to figure out if my music actually translated at all to acoustic, but it becomes an opportunity to sort of have a more intimate interaction with the audience, right? It's a way to sort of strip away a lot of that sort of theatrical performance stuff like you had asked about, and to sort of be the person that you are. And I think it stands on its own. And I also believe that the interactions that I've had with people, in a live form have been significant enough that something like this is just a different flavor of the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. So about your last album, it's kind of strange to think about because it's you making both sides of the album, yet it's both Devin Townsend Project and Devin Townsend. How do you sort of separate those intellectually?
Well, in the same way that as we're talking, I'm trying to separate the fact that I got kids running around and a dog with a sore leg, and I'm trying to give answers that aren't totally sound like a crazy person. It's like
no.
You've got to
bring out the crazy. I like that.
But that's the thing is it's like it always comes back to you. I think the thing with myself is I have been split thematically, creatively, intellectually for as far back as I can remember, man. And I think there's an aspect of that you just have to use. I think if I try and deny it or fight it or try and cover it with some other sort of schmutz, it's going to be pretty transparent to those who have followed what I've done for so long. So I just use it. I get my job done in life. I'm a decent dad. I'm a decent husband. I'm not a liability to the people around me. But dude, I'm wired like a lunatic in a lot of ways. So when I go to try and represent what's been going on over the last year or so in music, as I have for many years, it just comes out like that. And I also have found that if I try and curb it in any way, and say, oh, that's too far over the top, or that's too much this way or that way, it just doesn't work. It's like it's easy for everybody to see that I'm phoning it in. So when it came to Ziltoid and Dark Matters and Sky Blue. I just went with it, and ultimately, what that ended up representing is that Ziltoid plays a role as a metaphor for that sort of abstract and over-the-top part of my personality that perhaps I don't feel comfortable in letting loose in the same ways that I did when I was 22 and strapping. But because it is a part of me and always will be a part of me, it's good for me to be able to write about it and make a story about it. And in the case of Z2, sort of make the sort of fictional battle between the two, Devin versus Ziltoid in that sense. And that actually really helps me. And I think the end result of that is hopefully enjoyable music, but also a way for other people to participate in those sorts of internal struggles and maybe recognize that it's not that unusual a thing to be fighting with those sort of alien impulses as a human in this point in human development, right? It's a time.
Definitely. Well, in terms of people getting involved and expressing themselves, I noticed there was some fan artwork. So I definitely think that's the case.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's the thing on the Z Squared. We did the Universal Choir, where we ended up having like over 2,000 voices singing on those songs, and then the Pledge Drive, where we had people participate, and the Lucky Animals video from Epicloud, where people put in their own videos. I mean, all these things helps, and it helps me too, because I think as a person, I'm often fighting with my own fear of people. And that's something that it's been my cross to bear since I was very young. It's just, I, as do many people, I have a hard time participating in social situations. And so making music that not only includes but also invites that sort of participation, in a way it kind of forces me out of that shell, and it forces me to participate with people in a way that is throws me out of my comfort zone and consequently gives me more to write about. So that whole battle between myself, or the dichotomy between Ziltoid and Devin Townsend project, it's just what happens. And I choose not to try and suppress it. I just try and work with it and hope that there's something at the end of it that makes sense.
Speaking of participation, one of your other projects, Casualties of Cool, was funded by a crowdfunding effort, and the extras on top of that was used to fund the double album. Do you sort of view crowdfunding as something in the future, or is it just an experimentation?
It was just an experiment. I mean, a lot of what I do is just sort of fumbling around and trying things on for size and seeing how they fit, right? The crowdsourcing was brilliant, but it also was very difficult in some ways, and it brought some sense to me that there are people that participate in this. And as silly as that sounds, because obviously people participate in what I do if I do it professionally, for whatever reason, I think I had made myself oblivious to that. And that was more of a self-defense thing, where if I can ignore the fact that there's people participating in the music, then it still keeps it personal. It still keeps it my own little world. And when I did the crowdsource, all of a sudden I'm like, holy there's tons of people listening to this. And it was like this crazy sort of anxiety as a result. But the financial aspect of it was great. But I mean, me being me, I blew it all on puppets, and then the other side of it that was difficult was the fact that we had problems with the manufacturing of one of the box sets that we had offered, and that resulted in a bunch of people becoming really upset with me and the organization for not being able to deliver it in a timely fashion. We finally got it done, and we got it sent out, but it was like a learning curve for all of us, man, and it was heavy. It was great, though. I mean, I'm so honored to have had the experience of people supporting it, but to continue doing it would have to be a special situation for me, because it was complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated.
Now, your music crosses, I think it might be uncountable genres, but is there anything in particular you think that, no, I just couldn't go there? That's something I couldn't include in my music. I just don't feel it.
Well, I don't think of it in the sense that I premeditated it all, so that's a hard one for me to answer because, for example, I didn't start Casualties of Cool going, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a folky sort of outer spacey country record. It just evolved. And then, as all these records do, the points that these things evolve to become so specific over time that it becomes a very identifiable vibe. And when that happens, it's aside from any sort of conscious decision making on my part. So I don't know if I've ever thought to myself in any recording situation, oh, I think now I should do death metal. Oh, now I should do pop. Now I should do orchestral. It's not. I just sort of follow where it leads, and if it leads to those places, it's as much a surprise to me as it is to everybody else.
Yeah, more organic. Yeah.
Entirely organic.
Yeah. So a few days ago, you announced on Twitter that the new Devin Townsend project will be called Transcendence. Now, I imagine that'll be a little bit far off. What was the prompting to sort of announce that, hey, there will be an album and that this is what it might be called?
Well, I woke up from a dream with one of the songs going through my head, and I thought, oh, that's it. And then an artist buddy I know who's doing work sent me a picture of an idea, and he's like, what do you think of this? I was like, that looks like Transcendence. And so that's what it was. I literally wrote that tweet, 8 minutes after being awake from a dream that included those things. And that's, again, another example of how I work, right? It's really down to the feel of it. And often you don't, you're as much a participant in the process, or I'm as much of a participant in the process as anybody, right? And I think the Transcendence thing came in a similar way to, say, Teria did. I remember driving through Canada, and just the word, I was like, oh, Teria. Oh, that's what it's about. It's about the earth, and it's this color, and it's this sound. And the word Teria inspires certain images, and it makes me think of certain different types of pictures and filters. And then after a year of picking away, it's like an archaeological dig. You'll start with a very vague idea of what it is you're trying to achieve. And then by the end of it, it's so specific. It's one thing leads to another, to another, to another. And at the end of the rainbow, you're like, well, it's that. There's Teria. There's Transcendence. There's Z2. There's Ziltoid. And to be perfectly honest, man, by the end of those things, the person that learns the most about it is me. Because I'll listen back to it and be like, oh, that's what that's about. I had no idea. I had no idea that, this was something that I needed to get out.
Fair enough. In terms of, I believe you're also writing a symphony. I don't, if you're not already doing enough in the world.
Well, I mean, again, it's like I often equate my musical process to like some sort of weird mental illness because I'm not. I mean, as much as I enjoy it, don't get me wrong, I do. I love it, but it's so obsessive for me. When I get an idea that inspires me, it's like all bets are off. I have to finish it. I have to achieve it. I have to do this. I have to do that, and all these things become of real hyper significance to me. And the symphony thing is just, there's a part of it that's just like, well, that's what I need to do now. I've done so much for so long that I need to make a symphony now. And then as soon as that thought sort of took root, then before you know it, you start thinking about themes, and then the themes become like a real tangible trajectory. And then it's just about filling in the blanks, and that happens subconsciously. I very rarely, even in that scenario, spend much time thinking about whether or not it should be this or the other thing. It just becomes it, right? And that's the only way I can really describe it.
Thank you. So the Devin Townsend project is touring Australia in October with Periphery. Now, they have two shows. One is already sold out, but the one on the 26th is thankfully still available. Devin, many things on the horizon. Thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate the opportunity, man, and have a great night.